Hello, and welcome to this presentation on multimedia learning. Today we will be looking at Mayer's cognitive theory of multimedia learning. So, what is multimedia learning? According to Mayer, learning is a change in knowledge based on experience. Multimedia learning is learning from words and pictures. This includes things you can hear as well as things that you can see. In this slide, I list auditory media on the left and visual material on the right. Media includes sounds and spoken words. It also includes printed words and visual material like charts, graphics, illustrations, and photographs. In the middle, I have video and animation because that's both auditory and visual. Mayer's principle for multimedia learning is that people learn best from a combination of words and pictures compared to words alone. I was trying to think of a good example for explaining this. This is what I came up with. My son is just now learning to tie his shoes. So imagine you're someone who's trying to learn a skill like this. Maybe you don't have someone to teach you, so you're reading about it. Think about how it would go to read a description of how to tie shoes that didn't have illustrations. It might go something like this. Hold one string in each hand, cross one over the other, then under, then through, so on and so forth. Not so helpful. Now think how it would be better if there were pictures to go along with the text. Perhaps only the most important words were used and were placed next to the image illustrating each step. Much better. The same applies for video. Having a voice and a visual to teach the skill would be a lot better than one big block of text. So that's the idea behind Mayer's multimedia principle. Using words and pictures makes for better learning. Mayer's theory is based on 3 assumptions about how we learn. These assumptions refer to how the brain processes information. Next, we'll learn about the dual channel assumption, the limited capacity assumption, and the active processing assumption. First up, the dual channel assumption. The dual channel assumption states that the brain has separate channels that process visual and auditory information. 2 separate systems, 2 different parts of the brain. The channels interact, but they are indeed separate. Next up, the limited capacity assumption. The limited capacity assumption states that your brain can only process small amounts of information at a time. Working memory can process maybe 4 to 5 pieces of information at once. If you present too much information at one time, you'll overload working memory. And lastly, the active processing assumption. The active processing assumption means that humans engage in active learning through 3 processes. The first is selecting information. This means actively paying attention to the relevant words and pictures in a presentation. Second is organizing information. Here you organize those words and pictures and make a mental representation of it. Third is integrating information. You take those representations, make connections to prior knowledge, and then the new knowledge transfers to long-term memory. Next, we'll look at Mayer's model for cognitive theory. So here's a copy I made of Mayer's model. The box over here on the left represents your multimedia presentation. You can see in this box here are your senses, your eyes and your ears that pick up the words and pictures. And here is that first process we went over of selecting information. This is where you're paying attention, listening to the relevant words, looking at the relevant images, and transferring them into working memory. You can see that there are 2 separate channels here. You take those words and pictures and organize them into models to help you understand and remember. Lastly, you take those models and integrate them together and with prior knowledge. At this time, the new knowledge moves into long-term memory. So that's it. That was the presentation on multimedia, learning assumptions, and cognitive theory. Understanding these concepts is important as we move forward and cover Mayer's design principles that build upon these theories. See you next time.
Created using Powtoon.